And that is the third reading, the last piece of legislation before it then goes on to the House of Lords and before, hopefully, Theresa May triggers Article 50, and she's due to do that on the 9th of March. It's not bad, is it? It'll only be 8 months since we voted. There you are. These things, it seems, take time. For Labour, tonight promises to be a bit of a catastrophe. Jeremy Corbyn has put a 3-line whip, and what that means is he's ordered his MPs and his front benchers, he's ordered them on this vote at 7:52 to go with the people of this country, to go with the majority view in the referendum and to vote to trigger Article 50. But he faces a rebellion. On the second reading, there were 47 Labour MPs that went against this, including 10 of his own front bench. Tonight, well, the rumours are it could be over 50. And of course, the real mystery card is, will Diane Abbott even turn up? Because she threw a sickie last time, didn't she? So that's going to be very, very interesting. The other point is, if you do actually order someone to do something and they don't, surely then you have to sack people. So we could see some mass sackings in the Labour Party tomorrow. The Conservatives have their own problems, but on a much smaller scale. Probably half a dozen, maybe 7 people that will rebel. And of course the Lib Dems and the SNP don't even recognise that Leave vote happened last year. But my question to you tonight is that if an MP on this third reading tonight defies that referendum result, does that make them an enemy of democracy? And I want you to give me your view on that. I want you to call me on 0345 6060 973. I want you to text me on 84850, and you can tweet me on @LBC, and don't forget the hashtag Farage on LBC, and we go straight to Philip in Romford. Are these MPs, Philip, that don't want Article 50 to be triggered, are they enemies of democracy?
Yes, indeed they are. They're not recognising the majority vote and the democratic processes that the majority wins. We won, and now they should support the country as a whole on the majority vote,
Philip,
not to maintain their same position.
Why are they doing it, Philip? Why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? Why are they defying the will of the biggest ever exercise of democracy in this country's history?
Because they just want to delay Brexit. That's all they want to do, is frustrate it and possibly try and get a referendum, which is never going to happen. There'd be uproar in this country over the democratic rights being taken away from people, and they just don't accept that the country has spoken.
Well, Philip, I have to say, I agree with you completely. I genuinely think these people are enemies of democracy. After all, what happened here was the House of Commons voted by a majority of 6-1 to put this essential question of Britain's membership of the European Union to the people in a full, free and fair referendum. And the government themselves, if you remember, Philip, sent a leaflet to every house in the country saying, we will abide by your result. So I'm with you, Philip. I think they are enemies of democracy. Question is, Philip, what penalty do you think they should pay?
Well, I think that there should be a mechanism for removing them from their public office.
Well, counter-argument, of course, is that they have their own views and their own conscience, I suppose. But surely, Philip, isn't the real answer that we get even with them at the next general election? Isn't that really the answer?
Well, that is the way to deal with these people, is to get them out of office at the next election. The trouble is, we don't know when the next general election is going to come. I would have thought that the Tories should be thinking about calling one sooner than later, because Labour are in uproar.
I think
no leg to stand on whatsoever, and I think people. I'm not a political beast, but this has motivated me, and I feel very passionately about it, as does a large proportion of the population.
I think this question, Philip, about a general election, I was one of those people who was saying, no, there won't be an early general election. Theresa May's a cautious person. She'll run this through until 2020. But I'm beginning to think, what happens if this Labour rebellion is indeed over 50 or 60 MPs and there are a dozen people on Corbyn's front bench? If he doesn't sack them, having applied this 3-line whip, then frankly, his authority will have gone to dust, and Labour's ability to provide any effective opposition will frankly have become a joke. And I think, Philip, there may well be, and we'll probably know within 24 hours, there may well be a chance, maybe it's only 25 to 30%, but I do think for Theresa May, it might be riskier not to hold a general election in May rather than to hold one. Philip from Romford, very passionate, agrees with my point of view that these people are behaving very badly, and your texts and tweets coming in. The first one I've got, Mr Farage, if MPs vote against Brexit, they should be made to step down, as they are a disgrace to this country. They need to look in the dictionary to find out what democratic means, and that's Kathy from Southampton. And on the other side, I get a text saying, when can we expect the 350 million you promised us for the NHS? That's anonymous, that one. Yes, I think during a campaign, both sides said some things they shouldn't have said. The difference is that the Remain camp have been lying to us for over 50 years. For over 50 years, because our parents' generation were given ultimately a referendum about whether we should stay in a common market, and they were told, don't worry, it won't be political, it'll all be absolutely fine. So if you could say that the Leave side, and not me, by the way, I begged and I urged Michael Gove and others to get rid of this 350 million figure. They could have gone for 200 million and it would have been incontrovertible. But if the Leave side told a little tiddly white lie, the Remain camp have been telling whoppers for 50 years. Matthew in Folkestone, are these MPs who tonight will vote not to trigger Article 50 enemies of democracy?
Good evening to you, Nigel. I'm really glad you read out that text regarding the definition of democracy.
Yep.
The definition of democracy, as far as I'm aware, is to do with each citizen being proportionally represented. So 52% of the people who voted in the referendum voted to Leave, 48% of them voted to Remain, and I forget what percentage of the people eligible to vote.
It was actually, Matthew, it was about 73%, which is the highest turnout we've had in any election for sort of 40, 50 years.
Yeah, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That was a great day for democracy that there was such a high turnout.
Sure.
So that being the case, the 40% that voted to Remain still have a voice, should still have a voice in the House of Commons, correct?
Well, I'm not sure. There will be MPs who, of course, back the Remain side and believe we're doing the wrong thing. I get that, Matthew. Well, just one sec. But the point of a referendum, was that we were making a big historic decision that would bind us for decades to come. And both sides were perfectly clear about that. And what I'm arguing, Matthew, is, yes, I understand the concept. You know, at elections, let's say the Tories have won and you're Labour, your job as a Labour MP is to represent those people that voted for you, and you must fight from a minority position for those policies. But this is different, Matthew. This was an absolutely, plus or minus decision, and we made it. And surely a Democratic MP would say, I don't like it, but I accept it, we're leaving.
Well, yeah, but my point is that the majority of the electorate didn't decide to leave or remain.
Well, Matthew, but no election ever.
No. A politician's job is to represent their constituency. So any politician who votes will decide what is in the interest of their constituency and what their constituency asks for them to do. So surely any SNP MP who votes against it is voting in the interest of their constituency. And that is democracy at work, don't you think?
Well, I mean, look, there are lots of Labour MPs from London who tonight will defy the will of the referendum, and they will be in seats where people voted Remain. But equally, there are going to be Labour MPs in the Midlands and the North, and maybe from South Wales, where their constituents clearly voted to leave, and yet they're going to vote against Article 50.
I don't doubt that is the case. I'm glad you bring that up, though, because it's not the job of an MP to decide to vote on behalf of what their constituency desires. It's what's in their constituency's best interest. When you vote for an MP, you vote for them to represent you in Parliament, just as when you were elected to the European Parliament, you were elected to represent the UK's interests within Europe.
Yeah.
because of that, you were elected because people liked the way you spoke about Europe.
I mean, an MP's priorities, Matthew. Churchill once said that an MP's priorities should be firstly to his or her country, secondly to their conscience, thirdly to the will of their constituents, and fourthly to their political party. That was how Churchill saw the priorities of an MP, and I would argue, Matthew, that tonight is a night to put the interests of the country first, and the country, through a very bitterly fought referendum, made a decision. And to try and stop it, or block it, or delay it, or dilute it is, in my view, we'll disagree, Matthew, but in my view, fundamentally undemocratic, and thank you. Text here, yes, they are enemies of the people, Joe in London. Big Jeff says, get them out. I got a tweet here. Nigel, we need more people power. MPs in Parliament. Get rid of these traitors who do not represent the British people. Gosh, steady on, old boy. That's Jeff Hazel. Some MPs feel the Out campaign was not 100% factual and made claim that it will never be delivered on, so better to see the deal first. Well, of course, that is one of the arguments, David Noble. One of the arguments is, and what Theresa May has conceded this week, is that at the end of the negotiating process, she will put the deal, or it could even be no deal, and we'll discuss that as the following months come on. She will put that, and the House of Commons will give an opinion, but it won't have an absolute power of veto. Nigel, these people only believe in democracy when it suits them. They should stand down and go for re-election, Graham. Oh, I'd love to see that, Graham. That would be absolutely fantastic. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
They protect us every day, and all this week we're turning the spotlight on them.
Emergency which service?
Tomorrow I'll be live from the heart of the Met Police's new HQ.
I'll be on the ground on the front line of the action.
And I'll be policing the skies above London.
And for the final time, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe will take your calls as he bows out as Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Blue Light Week with me, Nick Ferrari, on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, from a great night's sleep to the perfect breakfast included.
If your company is considering a merger or acquisition, it's time to start thinking about how your office space will cope. Speak to Maris Interiors, the experts in office design and fit-out. Initial consultations, design ideas and budgets are provided without charge and will show you all the available options. To arrange a meeting or find out more about what we can do for you, visit officerelocation.co.uk. Maris, workplace design experts.
The best place for sleepyheads is in the Bridge Bedding bed.
At Bridge Bedding, we have hundreds of beds and mattresses in stock from the biggest brands in the UK. We'll beat any price on a like-for-like basis and we'll deliver for free. So before you buy your next new bed, visit a Bridge Bedding Centre, Rectory Grove Leigh-on-Sea, Upminster Road, Hornchurch, or online at bridgebedding.com.
The best place for sleepyheads is in the Bridge Bedding bed.
What is the only bird that can fly backwards? What's the name for a fear of cheese? What are the pieces of paper from a hole punch called?
If you know, you have exceptional general knowledge. But at Hiscox, our insurance experts have chosen small business as their specialist subject. That's why more than 200,000 UK businesses rely on us to help provide the right cover. Hiscox, business insurance for the small and the brave.
And the answers: A, the hummingbird, B, turophobia, C, chads.
Buying a new car is so exciting, but at the same time, a bit daunting. Trudging around the dealers, haggling over price, always wondering if you're getting a good deal. But with CarWow, there's none of that. Just select the car you want, and CarWow brings you the best prices from their network of top dealers. All you have to do is choose which one to buy from. It's car buying with you in the driving seat. Search CarWow and try it today.
On the 25th of October 2016, the government announced Heathrow as its preferred scheme for new airport capacity in the southeast. A national consultation is now underway to discuss what happens next. Go online to find out more. More about what expansion at Heathrow Airport may mean for the United Kingdom as a whole. and more about what it could mean for your own region. And quite simply, to have your say. Search Heathrow Airport expansion.
JustATrader.com.
Washing machine on the blink? No problem. Just shower your clothes on. Job done. And you'll smell like coconut cream. Or get yourself on trustatrader.com and find the right person to do the job for you. Pop in your postcode and the trade you need, then you can choose from loads of tried and tested tradespeople in your area. Reviewed, reputable, right good tradespeople. Visit trustatrader.com.
JustATrader.com.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
In half an hour's time, MPs will divide for the third and final reading of the Article 50 piece of legislation, known as a bill. And there are going to be people who vote against Article 50 being triggered, and I'm asking you tonight whether you agree with me that they are enemies of democracy, because this referendum was supposed to sort this issue out once and for all. But maybe just worth reminding ourselves of what it is that we voted to leave. Greece, since 2008, now just think about this, since 2008, the Greek economy has contracted by 28%. They have seen 7 cuts to old age pensions, 8 rises in income tax. Many of the hospitals around Greece now simply don't have the drugs to treat people to a proper standard of a European nation. They've been bailed out 3 times by the European Union, the IMF, and they're now, believe it or not, on the verge of facing a 4th bailout. They have repayments to make in the next 3 months that they simply cannot make. And now, at last, the International Monetary Fund has warned that Greece's debts are on an explosive path, and they're reluctant, the IMF, to put in any more money. And Germany, of course, are reluctant to put in any more money because they've got an election in September. And I have to say, I've argued it for years, but Ted Malloch, who's the proposed US ambassador, has said today, and Ted never holds back with anything that he does. Ted has made it clear today, the only way Greece can survive is to crash out of the Eurozone, to get the drachma back, to have a devaluation, and to give their country a chance. So if you thought the Eurozone crisis had gone away, it hasn't, it's back and it's real, and I promise you, Italy's not too far behind. And Romania, well, for now, 9 days in a row, there have been street protests in Romania, the biggest demonstrations since the fall of Ceausescu back in 1989. And they're protesting because there's a new piece of legislation proposed that says that any public servant that has stolen less than £38,000 should not be subject to a judicial sentence. So you're a local civil servant, you've only nicked £35,000 each year, that's all right, old son, you're going to get a slap on the wrist. It's unbelievable that we are in a political union with a country like Romania. They frankly should never have been allowed to join. And you add to that the growth of political parties, some on the extreme left, some on the extreme right, and believe me, folks, we're very, very wise to be leaving these failing structures. If you disagree, if you want to ring in and tell me that Greece is on the edge of an economic miracle, or that Romanians' courts and legal system are up to the same standards as ours, and therefore it's perfectly reasonable for a Brit to be extradited to face trial in Romania, then you please let me know. Meanwhile, back to my theme, are the MPs, are the SNPers, the Lib Dems, the One Green, the 7 Conservatives, or however many it will be, and maybe 50 plus Labour MPs, are they, by defying the referendum result, by trying to stop the triggering of Article 50, are they enemies of democracy? I want to ask Luke in Ascot what he thinks of that proposition.
The short answer is yes. And I was just going to say that you shouldn't be too downhearted about it, because there is a positive to these MPs rebelling, and that is that in the Leave seats for Labour and in the Midlands, and especially SNP, if UKIP haven't already done it, is that UKIP will have a massive opportunity to gain some seats in the councils, if not an MP or two out of this. And the bill will pass regardless, even if there's 150, 200 people that stand up against it, you'll still get the majority that you need. But actually, it could work very much in favour for yourself.
Well, Luke, that may well be right, but I have to say, you're right. I mean, we know that at the third reading, we know there is going to be a majority that says we go with the referendum result. But what should happen to the 100 MPs or the 120 or whatever it is? How should they be punished, in your view?
I've always said before with the three-line whip that didn't work with his whips himself last time, I think Jeremy Corbyn, if he's going to save face for himself as the leader of the party, he does, and he's going to have to forget the next general election. They're not going to win it. He's going to have to get rid of the Labour MPs that defy it and build on for a general election in possibly 2025 or sooner. If he thinks he's going to win the next general election and say that, then he's lying to the people of his party, because they're not going to do it.
But if Jeremy Corbyn was to think that 2025 was his ambition, he would then be 75 years old, which, he looks fairly fit. He doesn't drink, which I'm told is very sensible. But he would be 75 running for Prime Minister in 2025. It isn't going to happen, Luke. And I think that if it looks like Corbyn's got no chance in 2020, I suspect we'll see further moves to remove him. Luke, thank you. Rob in Leamington Spa, are these MPs enemies of democracy? Am I wrong, Rob?
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
I think you are wrong insofar as two parts, really. Firstly, to use the term enemies of democracy, I mean, that's quite inflammatory language to use. And I think that's probably a little bit harsh or far, particularly the example I give is my second point.
Yeah.
Someone like Ken Clarke, who is an MP constituency, has campaigned passionately for Remain and been an ardent supporter of the European Union for years on years. To kind of say that him, in his Remain constituency that he represents, is an enemy of democracy and is doing something like shocking, I don't think's like fair or right, really.
So Ken Clarke is following his conscience.
Yeah, not only is he following his conscience, but he's also acting and voting in the opinion of the people he is elected to represent. We have a representative election. Representative democracy by constituency, not by nation. And so I think with someone like that, maybe I mean, certainly if I was an MP who thought, I personally voted to leave, but if I was an MP in the Remain constituency, I'd still vote to leave. But I think to describe Ken Clarke as an enemy of democracy is a little bit too harsh.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a very tough term to apply to someone like Ken Clarke, who I have to say is a terrific fella in many ways. I mean, he's rounded, he's got his interest in jazz, and he loves rugby and cricket and football, and he's very jolly, and I like him. I mean, he's one of those people where if I meet him in a green room and we're doing a debate or something, I will chat happily and amiably with him. I just disagree with him on politics. But Rob, my point is this. You're quite right to talk about the fact that we have a representative democracy. You're quite right that MPs need to represent the views of their constituents. I get all of that, but I'm arguing, Rob, that on this one very unique and unusual occasion, all of that process was subcontracted out to the people of this country to vote in a referendum with the absolute assurance given by everybody, including a government leaflet into every home, that however we chose to vote as a nation, that would be respected. So my point, Rob, is that the normal rules don't apply here. This was a simple, binary, yes or no decision, and I think any MP, even Ken, with his 40 whatever it is years of supporting the project as an MP, I mean, it would be better, in my view, if Ken Clarke just had another pint and abstain by not being there. Mind you, who knows what Diane Abbott will do when this vote comes at 7:52. So that's my point, Rob. Does that make sense or not?
It does make sense. I think there's I think that's pretty fair. But I think really it's that enemies of democracy is too strong. I don't think that's particularly helpful. So perhaps I don't know how you term it in a less flashy way for your very enjoyable radio show, but that's
all right, Rob. So okay, I'm the proposition I'm putting to you is in slightly too harsher terms. That's what you're saying. Rob, I take the point. You've made it beautifully. Tweets, anyone who attempts to throw spanners in the works must be placed in public stocks and have rotten fruit thrown at them. That's from Mark Kelly, one of our very much more moderate listeners to this show. All said, we have no choice, unfortunately, but to trigger Article 50. Otherwise, the European Union has the option to force a very bad deal upon us. At LBC, tweet, if people voted for Brexit due to a massive lie, should the vote be declared null and void? Maybe you're right. Maybe we should declare null and void the last 10 general elections and the referendum in 1975. And I have to come back to this point, Kieran, who's tweeted this in, that if the Leave side told a couple of white lies and a couple of factual inaccuracies, the Remain camp have told whoppers for half a century. And someone tweets in here and says, no, because 48% voted to stay, 50% of the people who voted to leave. This does not constitute the people. And that's what Steve Orr tells me. Well, Steve, like it or not, that's what the referendum was all about. And one last text here. Nigel, take Tim Farron. He does not care about the referendum. Clegg refuses any result, and Labour is finished. Paul in Cornwall. Well, I do think that the big run-on from this tomorrow, because none of the amendments that wanted to dilute or delay the result are going to pass this evening, although many of them will get as many as 300 votes. But on the big one that is coming, we think in 22 minutes' time when they will divide, on the big one, we know it's going to carry, but goodness me, if over 50 Labour MPs and if over 10 Labour frontbenchers defy a three-line whip, which is an absolute order from the party leader to do something, it's rather like threatening a child, isn't it? If you threaten a child with a punishment, if they step over the line and you don't deliver that punishment or withdrawal of rights or whatever it is, you as a parent or as a teacher have lost authority with that child. And that is the position I think Jeremy Corbyn is going to be in by this time tomorrow. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show exclusively here on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Rupert Bartier.
Jeremy Corbyn is facing a possible rebellion this evening as MPs vote for the final time on triggering Article 50. The Labour leader has issued a three-line whip to approve the Brexit bill. Speaking during his nightly show here on LBC, Nigel Farage says it could be a bad night for the party.
Well, the rumours are it could be over 50. If you do actually order someone to do something and they don't, surely then you have to sack people. So we could see some mass sackings in the Labour Party tomorrow.
Tara Palmer-Tomkinson has been found dead at the age of 45. The socialite had close links to the royal family. Prince Charles says he's deeply saddened by her death. And Donald Trump is accusing the American justice system of being politically motivated after his travel ban on people from 7 countries was suspended. Appeal court judges will decide later this week if the ban should be reinstated. LBC weather. Frosty into the evening, light snow possible, a low of -1 Celsius. Cold and cloudy for most tomorrow. Sunshine and showers also possible, a high of 5 degrees.
LBC Travel. Good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Well, the A12 is closed heading into London between Junction 25 for Marks Tay and Junction 19 for the Boreham interchange. Bad queues are back to Junction 27 for Colchester. A lorry came off the Coleman's Bridge, Junction 22 this afternoon. It's expected to stay shut overnight, as well as been causing havoc for a good few hours now, and will do so well into the evening as well. Coming the other way on the A12, it's crawling between 21 for Whittam South and 22 for Whittam North. All lanes are back open now. It was shut for a while following that accident. The M25 is queuing for around 6 miles clockwise between 23 for South Mims and 25 for the A10. That's because of an accident which is blocking one of the 4 lanes. Delays still of about half an hour coming along that stretch. The A40 is queuing coming into London between Hillingdon Circus and the Polish War Memorial. A car's broken down on the exit slip, leaving it partially blocked. And the A316 remains closed heading out of London from the Hospital Bridge roundabout in Twickenham to the M3 at Sunbury for investigation work after a serious accident causing delays back to the Whitton Road roundabout. Still delays through Feltham and Hounslow because of this as well. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
The Multi-York Winter Sale is now on with big savings on all our quality sofas. Create the right sofa for you at all stores nationwide and at multiyork.co.uk.
Your perfect car's easy to find, and it's easy to buy too. Because at Car Giant there's up to 8,000 cars in stock, all in one location. And Car Giant's massive buying power means they're all at great prices. Giant choice, giant savings. No wonder so many Londoners fall in love for less. Book your test drive at cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant. Fast Track Reclaim.
PPI, one question. Why have you still not checked if you're due a refund? Even if you don't know if you've had PPI, surely it's worth finding out. All Fast Track Reclaim needs is the name of your bank. No paperwork, no account numbers, just the name of your bank. We'll check PPI on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had. Find out now. Text YES to 82727.
Fast Track Reclaim. Text yes to 82727.
This is a live update for UK businesses. Every day, millions of consumers are shopping online for quality UK goods. And right now, some of the world's leading online marketplaces have reduced selling costs for UK businesses. To enjoy these exclusive discounts and to find the right online marketplace for you, search Exporting is Great.
People who've had their dental implants at TDC Implant Centre have had their lives transformed.
I had problems with other dentists who said it was just too complicated.
I'm Dr. Michael Zivitz, dental specialist at TDC Implant Centre. Even if your own dentist has told you nothing can be done, talk to us. Our award-winning treatment could give you a life-changing smile. In just one day, we'll give you a full set of beautiful teeth fixed in your mouth. Around 3 months later, we exchange your fixed teeth for a new permanent set.
I just wanted to get it sorted properly so I had permanent teeth again, and that's what I've got.
So see smileinaday.co.uk or call TDC Harley Street on 0203 7334 986.
A big night out, a lumpy bed. There are so many things that can keep us awake. But if you can't sleep because you're worried about paying the bills, we can help. Capitalise provides free, impartial and confidential face-to-face support to help people in trouble manage their debt. Find out more at capitalise.org.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, in about 20 minutes' time, MPs will divide. It's the third and final reading in the House of Commons of the Brexit Bill, the piece of legislation that enables the Prime Minister to trigger Article 50. There are set to be 100, maybe 110 or 120 rebels. And I've put the proposition out there that this would make them enemies of democracy to go against the referendum result. I'm told that phrase is a little bit strong by some. Whether it is a bit strong or not, what about the spirit of it? Because this is not a case of Parliament acting as a representative democracy. This is post a referendum in which we were absolutely guaranteed that however we voted, it would get put into practice. That's how I feel about it. How does Steve in Streatham feel about it?
Oh, hi, Nigel.
Hello.
Yeah, it makes me laugh when they say Britain voted to come out of the EU with the referendum and that, because 48% of people didn't vote for a start. And then you've got to add to that Theresa May didn't want to come out of the EU before the referendum, and nor did Boris Johnson. So, it's kind of pathetic, it's kind of pathetic in a way, because it should be a one-man, one vote. I don't know why they don't do it by mobile phone, with a contract.
Well, but surely, Steve, the point is that you're quite right that Theresa May was on part of the Remain camp, but you could argue that she's embraced democracy, she's accepted the result, and as Prime Minister she will do not what she thought the right thing to do at the time was, but what the will of the people is. And isn't that what this is all about, Steve?
Yeah, but the will of the people, if 48% of people don't vote, you know yourself, the people that don't vote often have the strongest opinions. And it's kind of pathetic. You ask a man in the street what they think of that, and then they don't vote.
Well, the non-voters here were 27%, all right? So it was 52% vote to leave, 48% to remain, 27% didn't vote. It sounds like a lot, but actually, by the standards of recent elections, this was a very, very high turnout. And it was, Steve, in terms of the numbers that took part, the greatest exercise in democracy in the history of this country. And I just feel...
Can I just say, though, Nigel?
Yeah, go on.
Can I just say, what about the 1 million people that went in, to protest against the Iraq war. That wasn't listened to, was it?
No, it wasn't, and nor were the 406,000 that marched to stop fox hunting being illegal. And no. I mean, look, Steve, I understand that point, but what I'm arguing here is that it was a binary choice. It was a yes/no. It was a plus/minus in this referendum. And I think our MPs should respect that we are, firstly, a united kingdom. It was a UK vote. And secondly, you can't tell people that it was their decision and it would be abided by, and then see people going against it and think people are going to keep faith in our politicians, Steve. I think, these MPs who do this in their constituencies, I think their support in their constituencies, even in strong Remain areas, I think respect for these MPs will go down, Steve. That's my view.
Okay, yeah, I agree on that, but I'm just so things will be all right then, because we've got to wait 2 to 3 years before we even know how it's really going to go. And you've got all these so-called experts going on the radio and TV saying, oh, we're all right, nothing's happened, that everyone was wrong. Well, let's see what happens in 2 to 3 years' time. If it goes great, I'm all for it.
Well, I tell you what, Steve, probably over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, the British economy will face bigger threats and challenges than just the issue of Brexit. But Steve, I thank you very much for your call. I'm going to ask George in Walthamstow, are these people enemies of democracy? Am I completely wrong?
Well, I don't know about completely wrong, Nigel, but no, these people aren't the enemies of democracy, because we have a system of parliamentary representative democracy. And that means our MPs go into Parliament and they represent us. So they have to do what they think is best for us. If they were delegates, which is a bit different, they would go in and just do what we've asked them to do. Now, 401 constituencies out of 650-something have told them to go in and get us out, yeah? So that's pretty straightforward. So that's the problem. How do you reconcile this business of we've basically told our MPs that we want out, but their role is to represent what they think is best for us. That's a slightly paternal approach, but that is the approach that we've got.
George, I get it, and philosophers were writing about this, 250 years ago, explaining that our parliament was a form of representative, not delegated democracy. You're absolutely bang on the money with that. But George, my argument is that the referendum meant they gave up their role as representatives. They delegated the authority on this particular issue to us, and that's why I think, actually, they are now, in fact, delegates of an entire United Kingdom that made a decision, and I think it's wrong to oppose it.
But that's not strictly true, is it? In the sense that the referendum was advisory, in the sense that it would advise the government on the policy that it should take.
Well, the referendum legally was advisory because of our very complex constitution, but I think morally it was pretty clear, wasn't it?
Oh, and absolutely, and in spirit, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about government. We're talking about the process of government here. And, we don't need to worry too much, do we? We're coming out, and if I'd have offered you 18 months ago a situation where we'd be on our third reading of a bill to get us out of the European Union, you'd have ripped my arm off, wouldn't you?
You bet your life I would, George. I couldn't be happier that we're having this debate right now. And I thank you very much. That's a great way to end the call. I just love this text. Nigel, if there's one good reason why we should leave the EU, it's the Eurovision Song Contest. I mean, no one likes us, says Barry in Tamworth. Tweet, Nigel, I believe Theresa sees how lucky we were afterwards when the EU now looks so unstable. Lucky escape, says UKThinkTank.com. Nigel, don't forget to mention that member state bailouts are illegal, as outlined in the Maastricht Treaty. EU commissioners don't care much for rules or democracy. Steve, he's talking there about Greece, which I mentioned, is now on the verge of its fourth bailout. Youth unemployment is still hovering around 60%, and the economy has fallen in total value by almost a third over the course of the last decade. Tony in Tottenham, what do you think about these MPs that are going to go against the will of the people in that free, fair, open referendum?
I think that they are trying to save the country from the traitors who misled people into voting for a Brexit which is clearly against the interest of the majority. There were false promises, there were lies, and people were misled into voting for Brexit. So when people say, oh, the people have voted, respect the will, in fact, the people have been fooled into voting in a particular way, and I think they should be saved from the mistake. We shouldn't jump into the precipice just because we started in that direction.
You mean the people...
I would like to say, Nigel...
Do you mean, Tony, hang on, Tony. Are you saying the people are too stupid, and so it's the job of...
I'm saying that many of those who voted for Brexit knew what they were doing and voted in their own interest, but there's a majority of people who did not understand what they were voting for. They thought they were voting for one item, and in fact, they were voting for something else. So yes, a lot of them were uneducated and did not understand what was put in front of them.
The uneducated...
Like to say,
go on, Tony. Make your next point, because I'm enjoying this so much.
Okay, the next... Good. I hope you enjoy the next one as well. I think you're a racist, and I really take offense at the way you spoke about Romania and Romanians.
Yeah.
Yes, there are demonstrations because people oppose what the MPs are trying to do. But think about the British MPs who've been embezzling hundreds of thousands of pounds, and they are trying to get away scot-free. So what's the difference?
I'll tell you, Tony, what the difference is. I'll tell you what the difference is. That corruption is absolutely endemic right throughout Romanian society, and that is backed up by every independent report that comes out. And furthermore, Tony, it's a country in which up to 4 million people are viciously discriminated against because of their race. And I find it really hard to believe that we're in a political union with a country that's in a state like Romania. And that does not mean, Tony, that I'm saying Romanians are bad people. There are lots of wonderful Romanian people that I've met because they always come up to me in the streets and say I'm Romanian, and there are lots of wonderful people. But the country has not made the transition from living under all those years of communism to being a proper Western democracy.
Why don't you talk about some bad people in Romania, just like some bad people in the UK? Why do you talk about the country? Because those 4,000 people or 4 million people that are discriminated against are the main source of most of the East European crime happening in this country. And any civilized country discriminates against criminals, okay? It's not about the race, it's about a group of people who associate to commit the vast majority of crimes. Now, if that sounds racist, then fine.
So, Tony, who's the racist here?
You.
Well, I have to say, Tony in Tottenham, thank you. He's just told you that it's the Roma that cause crime. It's their fault, but it's perfectly okay if he says that. Goodness gracious me, can you imagine if I even got anywhere near something like that? Right now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on LBC. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
MPs are about to vote on triggering Article 50. Assuming they vote in favour, how confident do you feel now about the Brexit process?
Clive Bull on LBC.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board. KLM Royal Dutch Airlines is pleased to announce imminent departures from London City Airport.
Booking a business trip or the dream holiday? KLM has started its own services from London City Airport, flying you from the heart of London to Amsterdam and the world. Tokyo, Shanghai, Lagos, Dubai, and many more. Book now at klm.com.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy your flight.
1 million is a gargantuan amount, isn't it? If 1 million people stood on each other's shoulders, they'd reach all the way to space. It'd be a bit cold at the top, though. So if I told you over 1 million people have chosen to sell their cars with WeBuyAnyCar.com, you might think, wow, I'm going to give that a go. Gargantuan. I like that word. Why don't you join them? Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
What is the longest tube on the London Underground? What is the collective name for a group of bears? What did Queen Victoria ban from her own funeral?
If you know, you have exceptional general knowledge. But at Hiscox, our insurance experts have chosen small business as their specialist subject. That's why more than 200,000 UK businesses rely on us to help provide the right cover. Hiscox, business insurance for the small and the brave.
Oh, and in case you were wondering, A, the central line, B, a sleuth of bears, C, the colour black.
Divorce. It affects every part of your life. You, your family, your home, your finances. And if you're a man facing divorce, perhaps even one you don't want, the situation becomes even more complicated. It's at times like these that you need a professional you can trust. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordell.co.uk, office in central London. A partner men can count on.
When it comes to finding something new, you can start the conversation at Hello You. Sign up and browse profiles for free at helloyoudating.com and start the conversation today.
Here's a true story from Aldermartin, Baines and Cuthbert. In January 2015, fire tore through a residential development in London with potentially serious physical and financial risk for the residents and owners. Fortunately, an ABC representative was quickly on site and made sure all the residents were transported safely to a paid-for hotel and given all the assistance they needed. No fuss, no hassle. For block management, ABC Estates will give your story an ending that'll make you as happy as Larry. Find out more at abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
Leading Britain's conversation, The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag FarageOnLBC.
Well, in the House of Commons, they're getting close to the third and final reading of the Brexit bill, the Article 50 bill. They are due to divide fairly shortly. But just before we go back to the Brexit bill, but staying with the House of Commons, and in particular, our revered Speaker of the House of Commons, who we had some pretty powerful debates about last night, because he basically said that Donald Trump was sexist and racist and should not come and speak to a joint Houses of Parliament. Doing it, of course, without even asking the House of Lords whether he should. But very interesting, one big opinion poll out today showing quite a clear majority of people think he has overstepped the mark. And increasing numbers of people in the House of Commons saying that, frankly, no speaker has been as partial as this in all the centuries that role has been there. Now, I think the Speaker has been inundated with messages of anger, and I'm sure support too, because a lot of people agree with what he said about Trump, but that was never the issue. The issue was, should he be neutral? And this is the standard reply you'll get if you contact the Speaker. It is, the Speaker appreciates that others may hold a different view on the matter. However, it is part of his role as Speaker to represent the views and concerns of his parliamentary colleagues, as he did on this occasion. So he represented the views of the House of Commons without even asking him. We have somebody in the chair who is a mind reader. He clearly has far more talent than ever I'd understood. At least that's his weaseling excuse to try and get out of being completely over the top and wrong. But that was yesterday. For today, we're talking about MPs that are about to vote against Article 50, and we're going to go appropriately, I think, to Andrew in Fife in Scotland. Andrew, how do you feel about the SNP MPs voting against Article 50?
I think they're entitled to do it, but my opinion is that Theresa May and the Tories are the enemies of democracy. They should have given the people the choice of how we leave. A Norway deal, which you apparently have agreed with in the past, also the choice between that or WTO terms. That would have been the far more democratic approach to this situation.
Well, it wasn't a menu, was it? It wasn't, you know, do you want steak or fish or...
Simple 50-50 choice. WTO or a Norway EA, EFTA type deal. So I don't see a problem with that.
Well, I tell you what.
Either way.
I tell you what. I tell you what, Andrew. I tell you what, Andrew. Being on the Five Coasts, God, wouldn't it be wonderful if you were like Norway? Can you imagine what it would be like if Scotland had 200 miles of the North Sea and the Upper Atlantic, 200 miles exclusive economic zone, and all of those fish in those waters would be Scottish fish, and no foreign boat could fish in your waters.
It would be the UK fish if we leave the EU. That would go to the UK.
Well, do you know, Andrew, here's the irony. The irony that the Scottish nationalists don't seem to grasp is that actually by leaving the European Union and with the devolution process we have in this country, actually Scotland would have far more independence and far more control and autonomy over its own life outside the European Union than it would in. And I honestly do not believe that a British government would not say to Scotland, yes, those fisheries waters are yours to manage. Maybe there'll be a little bit of collective sharing, but they're yours to manage. Andrew, your point is the referendum should have been like a multiple choice. It wasn't.
No, not a multiple choice. Parliamentary democracy. First vote was bring the referendum in. Second vote is, do we leave? Third vote is, how do we leave? That is parliamentary democracy. You know, but,
well, you could argue for Remainers, how do we remain? You know, what legislation? What legislation will we veto?
Remainers like me lost the vote, so the only vote that would come would be WTO terms or some form of trade deal, etc., with the EU, either EEA like Norway or EFTA like Switzerland.
I think, Andrew, had you put to the British people, as I say, a multiple choice list of options, I genuinely think the turnout wouldn't have been 73%. I'm not sure it would have been 23%. You know, frankly, you cannot complicate things like that. It was a very simple referendum, as indeed was the Scottish referendum that took place 2 years before it. This referendum was very simple. Do you wish to stay or leave the European Union? And we voted to leave the Union and to take back control of the United Kingdom independently.
How would choosing which way you want to go, via WTO terms or EEA? Apparently you don't have a problem with either.
No,
you said during the referendum campaign.
I want us to be.
Why shouldn't the people get their choice to vote?
Well, Andrew, you cannot see what's in the future. You cannot see what Remain would have meant. I mean, Remain wasn't staying part of something static. The European Union's changing all the time. In fact, they're now building a European army. You know, would we have been part of that? Is that something perhaps we should have voted on? You can't do that because actually, on both sides of the argument, you could say that 2 years down the track, it could be different. It was.
You're arguing, I don't know the future, then we can't choose anything because we don't know what it's going to turn out to be.
We could not choose the future. Whether we voted to Remain or, Andrew, we voted to leave. But what we have voted to do on the world's stormy waters is to have our hand on the tiller through people we directly elect. And they might make a frightful hash of it, Andrew, but if they do, we can genuinely remove them and replace them with somebody else. And we can start debating in general elections things like Labour policies, things like fishing rights, and we'll be in control, not the unelected European Commission. And Andrew, that's what we voted for, and that, I think, is what we're going to get, because if this does go through as we expect, I think it'll be a big moment. Andrew, I get the Scottish perspective, and I thank you for your call. Pauline in Bethnal Green, how do you feel about these MPs who are going to go against the referendum result?
Right. I would love it if all the MPs would vote in favour of leaving and invoking Article 50 now, etc. I would love that. That would be ideal. But I don't really think that it makes them enemies of the people. I think that they have some kind of justification in voting their conscience or voting on behalf of their constituency. But with regards to what Andrew was just saying in Scotland, he was saying that for the referendum question, there should have been more than just in or out. And we should have also been able to vote on trade. Well, the thing is, for a lot of people that were so passionate about this referendum, trade wasn't the biggest issue.
No.
It was immigration. And so, considering that we can't control immigration unless we leave the single market, it wouldn't make sense to be voting on trade.
No, Pauline, had it been multiple choice, I mean, that really would have been the most awful mistake. And as I say, the turnout would have dropped, the engagement wouldn't have been there. It was simple. Are we in control of these things, or is somebody else? And Pauline, that's what it was about. And you know, I take your points. You know, when you say that MPs should reflect their consciences and their constituencies, and I would say 99.9% of the time, Pauline, that is absolutely valid. I rarely criticise MPs or MEPs that vote against their own party on a matter of conscience. I've had members of mine MEPs of mine said, Nigel, I can't support the party on this one. Actually, I say, do you know what? If that's your conscience, I respect it. But my point, Pauline, is that as this was a national referendum, this was different because they actually shed their role as our representatives and allowed us to make the decision. And that's why I feel so strongly that actually they should be respecting it. Do you see?
Yeah, no, I do. I absolutely see. And in an ideal world, I wish that they would all just vote leave. But we have very stubborn people in Britain.
Well, we'll see. Pauline, thank you very much. Text, it would be unconscionable for MPs to betray the will of the British people. They must be held to account and removed from office, says Lorraine. And Lorraine, I agree with you. I think many of these people will pay an electoral price. And I thank everybody for their texts and their tweets and their calls. And I would just say my final thought is, well, OK, I concede that calling MPs that vote against Article 50, calling them enemies of democracy, yeah, OK, it's a bit strong, but I was trying to get a debate going, wasn't I? I was trying to get you thinking. I still think it's absolutely plain wrong for them to be doing it because they did delegate this decision out to us. But my real final thought is we are, I think, a few minutes away from reaching the point of no return. And for someone like me, who was always considered to be a hopeless case, it's a very happy moment. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7, but stay tuned for the final outcome on the Article 50 vote and the full analysis with Clive Bull, who's up next.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Yes, we will bring you that live. MPs are about to vote on triggering Article 50. Assuming they vote in favour, well, how confident do you then feel about the Brexit process?